So everyone, the time has come. We get to finally talk about the iPad 10th generation that just came out and compare it against the iPad Air 4 and see which specific iPad is the better one for you. Now, if you want to pick up either one of these iPads, the links will be down in the description. You can get them from there. You can help support the channel at the same time. Now, what's so funny is when the iPad Air 4 came out, or actually when the iPad 10 came out just recently, there have been so many people comparing it against the iPad Air 4 that came out 2 years ago, I think over 2 years ago at this point. And it's so interesting how when a new iPad comes out, people look at some of these older products like the iPad Air 4 and they're like, wow, this one is so much better. And that's exactly how people should view their products. If the latest generation isn't as good as the older one, just go and buy the older one and it's probably going to be cheaper in the used market. So with the iPad 10, this one is being sold for $449. And although you cannot buy the iPad Air 4 in the brand new market, that is probably going to be the biggest turnoff for a lot of people. They're just going to walk into the Apple Store or Best Buy or their, appstore.com, and they're just going to go ahead and buy it from there and see what's available. But there's a lot of iPad Air 4s available on eBay, on so many other places you can check it out, even certified refurbished, I think, from Apple. And it's about the same price, if not cheaper, than an iPad 10. So I would definitely recommend considering the option. I'm glad you are watching this video because you're at least interested in seeing what the differences are. Now, coloring wise, they do have a few different colors associated with them, but the iPad Air 4 actually had more colors that you could actually choose from. But I've said this before, I actually do think the colors of the iPad 10 do look pretty good. Like, I love the colors of the iPad 10, but the iPad Air 4 does have more colors you can choose from. At retail, the iPad Air 4 did cost more than what the iPad 10 is going for right now. But like I said, that came out over 2 years ago, and it's definitely gone down in price since then. Now on the front, very interesting overlaps. They both have the same exact display size, and I would argue it's almost kind of the same exact display, but from what I've heard and from what I've read, the iPad Air 4 is giving you a better display. Now, I wouldn't be able to tell that big of a difference unless we were having like a ProMotion display or something like that, but overall, you're definitely going to be getting, I would say and argue, at least a very similar experience, if not a better experience, on the iPad Air 4 than on the iPad 10th generation. They both have True Tone, they're both going to be that gesture-based design, and they're both going to be, very, very premium in that specific standpoint. Now on the bottom, they both have USB-C ports, which is great. No Thunderbolt or anything, but still having USB-C is really nice. And we do have the flat sides around this whole entire iPad as well. So this iPad is going to feel very, very modern. It's going to feel very premium in the hand. And you're really not going to have too many complaints about these specific iPads in those standpoints. Now on the back, we have the complete flat back, so no curves or anything like that. And we do have the camera setups on the top left. We have the Apple logo in the center. We have that, certification licensing stuff on the bottom of the iPad. So overall, these things look way more similar than they look different, which I'm not, I don't have anything against that at all. I think that's a very, very cool thing. And, I love how the standard iPad now does have a very, very premium design. Now, some other big things to keep in mind. For one, this is the biggest thing probably for a lot of people. The iPad Air 4 supports Apple Pencil 2 support. So that wireless Apple Pencil that you can just plug to the side of your iPad and then it charges it and it's wireless and you can use it after and all this stuff, that is supported on the iPad Air 4. That is not supported on the iPad 10th generation. You have to use that original Apple Pencil with that lightning port at the back. So you have to charge it via a dongle. It's very, very annoying. I don't know why Apple's still going this direction. Pretty much it's guaranteed that the iPad 11 is pretty much going to have, Apple Pencil 2 support at this point. And that is a very, very weird choice from Apple. I have no idea why they did that. I hope they change this in the future, which they pretty much are guaranteed to. But it's a very, very weird thing they did this in the beginning with. So that is probably going to be the biggest turnoff for a lot of people of buying an iPad 10. So if you're looking for another option, an iPad Air 4, I would argue, is going to be a really good choice for a majority of people. So that's probably the biggest thing here, to be honest. And they both have Touch ID support. They both support, different Magic keyboards, and the Smart Keyboard Folio case is actually supported on the iPad Air 4, which is nice. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. Now in the camera department, there's also a little bit of an overlap as well. So they both have 12 megapixel wide angle cameras on the back. On the front though, the iPad Air 4 has that 7 megapixel camera. The iPad 10 has that 12 megapixel landscape ultra wide camera. So from my experience, you're definitely getting a way better camera, at least on the front, on the iPad 10. But the other cameras are very, very similar. There's really not too much overlap between, the front cameras. I mean, obviously there's a little bit, but getting that landscape ultra wide camera on that, iPad 10 is probably one of the main differences here. And that's something I really do like. Besides the Apple Pencil, that is something that is really cool, and I hope they bring this over to the other iPads. But I've said this before in my other iPad videos, if you literally have a phone like an iPhone 11 or newer, or a Samsung Galaxy S10 or newer, or a Google Pixel like 5 or newer, you would probably arguably have a better camera in your phone than these iPads. So there's really not even that big of a point of getting something like using these cameras or focusing on it or going from one iPad to the other because of the camera when you're probably going to use your phone more so than this one. So that is kind of how I look at it in that standpoint. Now in the performance, actually before we get there, this is all for a longevity standpoint, which is kind of tied to performance. They both have the same chipset inside. So this is actually very, very interesting to me because I'm not too sure which one is going to basically overlast the other one. Is the iPad Air 4 going to outlast the iPad 10? Is the other one going to outlast this one? In my opinion, they're going to last exactly the same amount of time. We haven't really seen too much from iPads where Apple stopped supporting the older one, but they supported the newer one because of any other reason besides the chipset. So it'd be very interesting to see how Apple kind of goes around this one. I would feel like they're going to find a way to discontinue one or the other sooner than the other one. I just feel like that's something Apple would do. I hope they don't. There's not really been signs of that on the iPad lineup, but I'll be very, very curious to see. But they support their iPads like crazy. They, give them a lot of updates, and they take care of their iPads for a long time. My iPhone's now a little bit different, but they take care of their iPads, so that's probably something to keep in mind there. But the performance is also going to be almost identically the same on both. You're not going to be going from an iPad Air 4 to the iPad 10 because of the performance. They have pretty much theoretically the same exact performing chipset between them. If you factory reset the iPad Air 4 and you are getting a brand new iPad 10, I would argue that they would be exactly the same thing, which on paper they should be. They have the same display, same resolution. They're pretty much the same thing and the same chipset. The only thing I could even remotely think of is the RAM, and it doesn't look like that's readily available for people to read or something, at least not on Apple's website, which is weird. But regardless, you are going to be getting, theoretically speaking, a better performing iPad from either one of these. These things are going to be identically the same. So I will argue, in my opinion, that the performance of these iPads is still very good. Obviously, the iPad 10 just came out, so it's going to be a very good iPad. But the iPad Air 4, for what it brought at its time and how it's holding right now, it is a very good performing iPad. Even still, 2 years later, it's still holding up very well. Apple has since kind of staggered out their specific iPads. They've given it different chipsets and kind of brought in older chipsets and their iPhones and all this other stuff. So I would argue that you're going to be getting a really good performing chipset and a really good performing iPad from both of these. Whether you're a student taking notes, you're a gamer wanting to play iPad games, or you're whatever, you're going to be getting very good experience from both these iPads for sure. So in that standpoint, that kind of covers it up there. Now, I would argue that overall, you're definitely going to be getting, I would say, a better value per dollar from the iPad Air 4. If you're able to pick it up for $400, you would be getting the better iPad, let alone value per dollar. You're going to be getting the better iPad. You're going to be getting Apple Pencil 2 support. You're going to be getting, that's pretty much the big thing there in my opinion. That is arguably the best thing going for that iPad is that Apple Pencil 2 support. Everything else is almost identically the same on both, except for that landscape ultra-wide camera on the iPad 10. If that is a really, really big deal to you, then maybe you should go and just buy that iPad. You're also getting 5G support on the iPad 10 if that's important to you. But otherwise, I think a majority of people should, or if I could recommend it, I would recommend buying the iPad Air 4. I think that would be the better iPad for a majority of people, but the choice is yours. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.